Becoming single in midlife can feel like a fresh start, exciting even, but it can also be disorienting. The rules and rituals of mating and dating from yesteryear can leave your chatbot looking like a legitimate option. My next guests are a podcasting power couple. He's a Harvard trained MD who opened the first comprehensive men's healthcare center in the US, is the leading authority in testosterone therapy, author of 4 books, and currently the Blavatnik Faculty Fellow in Health and Longevity at Harvard Medical School. She is a PhD clinical psychologist, author, and futurist whose professional writing includes Aging and Sex, The Challenges of Monogamy, and Female Low Libido. Together, they are the hosts of the Sex Doctors podcast, where they deep dive into the science and psychology of sexual health and relationships. Today, they're going to use their professional superpowers and personal insights to bring clarity to the muddy waters of love in midlife as we ask the question, where have all the good men and women gone? This is the Curious Introvert podcast with me, Meredith. Around here, we explore taboo questions and societal blind spots. My mission, and yours, if you choose to accept it, is to inspire curiosity by exploring the nuance and paradox of our world. Please help me welcome expert super duo and sexual diplomats, Doctors Abe Morgentaler and Marianne Brandon. Thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
We're so happy to be here.
I am so happy to have you. You guys are just, first of all, freaking adorable. Am I allowed to say that?
Well, my wife is for sure.
Well, I could just like feel the love radiating between the two of you. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to you about all things dating in midlife. Like, we're going to talk about power dynamics, tech, cheating, porn, all the things. But first, you have been married 6 years, but you were together for 10. So that still puts you kind of in midlife when you were singling and mingling. What
Mhm.
were your biggest complaints while you were dating?
I would say it really is difficult to find someone that you feel like you're a good match with. At this point, we kind of analyze it. Midlife, we've kind of gotten to know ourselves so well that a lot of variables are really important. That's just true. And they don't feel very expendable. Like you can't, like, if you've got 6 important variables, it's hard to let any of them go and say, okay, I'm going to make do with 5. So that makes us pickier, which makes the whole process more complicated. So that's what I would say.
What about you, Abe?
I'd been single for about 20 years before Marianne and I got together. It was a long time. A couple of my friends, of course, had become single in the meantime. And I remember I had one friend who had a list of priorities for himself about what he was looking for in a woman. And I was so impressed with that because my experience was it was just hard to find a good woman. One of the issues I think that people have is how do you meet people?
Mhm.
We may have these ideas about what exactly it is we're looking for, but the number of people that we run into in daily life is limited. Maybe you go on websites, maybe you have friends or family that try and set you up, but that's still a limited number of people. And I would say also is that it's very different in the modern urban world where I've lived. Your family connections are distant. I worked in a place that was different from where I grew up. So that my social circle, like nobody knew my family or me. So it's all kind of people that you know as adults. And it's a different kind of situation.
I think what you're getting at is kind of the paradox of choice, right? In a rural community, for example, you know your neighbors. And so if you were, a dirty dog, like everyone knew about it, like, oh, he's such a player. But if you were a good person, everyone also knew about it and they could
That's
vouch
right.
for each other. And so even though there were fewer people, you felt like more secure in what the truth of your options were. Whereas
That's
like
right.
in a big city, oh my gosh, there's people everywhere. Look at it. This like per square mile, we've got more bodies, but everyone is strangers and they're not interacting like you said, except for on the apps.
Mhm.
That's right. And so if you meet somebody through an app or somebody sets you up, whatever, but especially with the apps, you know nothing about that person except for what they present to you when you meet, right? You don't know their history. You don't know where they come from. You don't know what they were like in high school or any of those things. You ask them what they're into, and it's whatever they tell you. So it's an interesting thing where it takes a while to build up trust. And it's just different. And this is one of the consequences of living in today's world.
One of my listeners sent in a question about apps since we're on that topic. She says, why is it almost without fail in every dating app I've ever been in, the men engage briefly and then ask for nude pictures? Dating apps seem to be just for facilitating hookups, not real relationships or friendships. It's very disheartening.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. So this psychology of the dick pic is something that I have like looked into because it's hard to really why would they do something they know that most women are going to get turned off by?
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
great question.
but I think I have the
Wait, they
answer.
are?
Cancel
Oh
your
my
2
God,
o'clock.
I wish I'd known earlier.
I- so I will say what I think, but I'll be interested to hear what Abe thinks. But I have come to the belief that guys do that because they're going to get a quick read on a woman and how like sexually maybe you use the word adventurous or open she would be. And if that sort of sexual relationship is front and center for him, he's going to like weed out women real fast if he sends a dick pic. That you look confused. Does that seem strange to you?
Okay, it does. Only because, like, I get what you're saying from like a primal level, but
Mhm.
I also have heard men complain about the batting average game. They say, well, women are behaving more like men on these dating apps, and so the rejection is higher. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, you can't complain about rejection rates and send dick pics. If you know that most women are going to be disgusted by a picture
Right.
of your penis, then
Mhm.
wouldn't you be incentivized to have better behavior?
I don't want to hold tight to this opinion because that's all it is, but it would seem to be no if they're looking to be efficient in their dating. If they're looking for efficiency, they can rule women out like that based
Oh.
on how they respond to the dick pic. So that's my guess. What do you think?
Well, it also has to do with what the guy is looking for. The question is, do you want to have sex or are you looking for somebody who's a potential partner? And they're not the same, right? They're not the same. And so, there's a lot of men who, and first of all, not all men are sending dick pics, right? And like, if the theme of this is where all the good men, they're probably not the ones sending the dick pics. I mean, you
Yeah,
could just start there, right? Let's just
right.
exclude them and we'll move on. But people are lonely. They want partners. And people are willing to put up with, I'd say women more than men, willing to put up with some stuff in order to get connected or feel connected or at least feel like they're going out and doing something and they're in the game. And otherwise the dick pics would be shut down immediately.
I don't. What do you think?
I don't know because I'm happily married for one. And for two, I didn't ever date in a world that had apps. Like, I remember the first time I met someone that said they met on eharmony.com. I was like, whoa,
Mhm.
that is edgy. So
Yeah.
I am really not a good sample of all of this. But when I think about complaints about from people who are single, one of the other complaints that I hear is about the lack of conversational reciprocity. And I am
Mhm.
wondering if the apps being the primary meeting up place for those initial conversations is contributing to that because an app is usually a form of entertainment. And so an entertainment is not a two-way street. It's a one-way street. You're extracting your entertainment. So I'm wondering if people who are really wanting deeper relationships than that typically come with dick pics, should they
Mhm.
just not use the apps?
I think that they can use the apps, but I would avoid the dick pic guys.
I mean, yeah. If a guy's looking for a relationship, avoid the dick pic. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. It's also kind of like a status game in a city with lots of people, with apps with lots of faces, and you can, swipe left or right. It kind of gives you that slot machine feeling. Like even when you find
Mhm.
someone good, okay, it's a game show now. Do you stick with contestant number three or do you put the coin back in the machine and pull the lever
Right.
again and see what you can pull up? How much of a factor is that?
I think that's a huge factor. This concept of too much choice is a phenomenon that we see in a variety of aspects of life. It's just not with dating. And I think people just become overwhelmed by who's next. Maybe there's someone better. And I think that it sort of takes over people's logic when they're approaching partners.
Would figuring out what you want in a partner help or hurt that hindrance? Because on the one
Mhm.
hand, you said, we become pickier in midlife, and that is part of the difficulty that single folks face. But on the other hand, would knowing exactly what you want cause you to just shop in better markets, we'll say?
So I,
Go ahead.
I have an opinion about that, which is I think it's good to have a jumping ground of knowing what you want, but it's also, I think, really in everyone's best interest to remain flexible because those are just facts. They feel they're information, but the vibe of the person is the bottom line of what you really need to know. So you keep your facts and you make kind of use those as general guidelines, but the vibe is critical.
What strikes me is, so first of all, I have tremendous sympathy for people who are single and don't want to be. It's a tough world out there. And we've been taught in many ways that all things are possible. And it affects us in a whole variety of ways, including mate choice, right? And the truth is, all things are not possible.
Yeah.
Right. So, we encourage kids, you can do anything you want, but they can't do anything they want. You can find the person of your dreams. I don't know that you can find the person of your dreams. It depends what your dreams are, right? It's got to be, if you're a woman, 6'2", tall, strong, handsome, brilliant, whatever. There's always something that doesn't fit into that idea of perfection. So, if we talk about we're all the good men, well, first we have to define what's a good man. But if a good man is somebody who has a good job, is ambitious, is reasonably successful, the likelihood is he's working pretty hard. And part of that find the good man, and I think part of the fantasy is he's going to have tremendous amounts of time and attention for me. But if he's all the other things that you want, depending on age especially, but he may be working on his career, and he may not have everything that you want him to be able to give to you. But what's the competition? What's the reality? Right? So, if you're out in the world and you're on an app, which is fine, I think people have to have a sense of what it is that's okay for them. That sounds like a compromise, and we're not supposed to compromise anymore.
Yeah.
But what we've lost is a sense of reality. And every person that we meet has a history, has something that they've gone through or are going through right then and there. And the question is, how can you find somebody that you can vibe with and have some kind of connection with where you feel at least valued and seen? People have been taught that they can, as I said before, they can do everything, they can be anything that they want. And there's a sense that all of us, once you reach a certain age, let's say your mid 30s, if you're alone, you've actually created, whether you realize it or not, you've created a life for yourself, right? Like it's full. Nobody's have like a ton of free time. And then the question is, how do you find somebody else who's going to fit into that? And the only way that happens is you have to give something up. And I think the idea that I don't have to give anything up, I just need this right person to complete me, right? That, which I think is one of the worst phrases ever, right? You may feel that when you're in love and stuff like that. But as a concept of meeting somebody, I think it's an impossible goal to reach.
Hmm. Do you think the definition of what a good man is has changed?
Hmm. I would say not really in truth, but it has in people's minds. Like the concept is a good man is sensitive and whatever, similar to that, vulnerable. But I think the reality is what we feel is a good man or a good woman, that's a gut reaction. And that's, in my opinion, baked into our DNA. And that doesn't adopt to a cultural trend of 10 years or 20 years. It's important for people to remember that those apps are algorithms. The intention is to keep you coming back, not gratify you. If the apps gratify you with the right person, you're done with the app. That's not the goal of the people making the app. So you got to keep that in mind. And I always encourage people, You got to get into the world. You got to meet people because of that vibe. You're only going to feel it really when you're with them in person. But keep in mind, the app isn't necessarily on your side in the way you think it is.
That is such a freaking good point because we still have cave people brains, And like we always forget about the biological component of what becomes an evolutionary mismatch, right? Like we're living in this modern society, swipe, 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 but we still,
Mhm.
have all these we've got ancient software that we're working with.
We do.
Yeah. And, I was in preparation for this conversation, I was listening to some other podcasts about relationships. And somewhere along the way, they were talking about how when in the old days you would go out to meet people, right? Let's say it's a Friday night and you'd, put on a good shirt and you'd go out and, you do your best to mingle and meet someone. If it didn't work, you probably ran into some of your friends who were also out
Mhm.
ready to mingle. And it was still a great night. But
Mhm.
instead, we're at home on our sofa, swiping, swiping, swiping. And so I wonder if the app not only keeps us on the app, but it magnifies the disappointment and makes us feel like, oh, we are the problem. We're the failure. When in reality, our old timey software is really meant to go out and find the consolation prize of platonic friendship or a funny memory.
That's brilliant. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So people take it as something's wrong with them, but this is much more complex than that. It's an algorithm that is not trying to really gratify, and it's our primal brains. We're primates. I mean, we're apes needing a certain
Yeah.
feeling that we can really only get when we're interacting for real. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say that I'm going to sound like my mother for a second.
Should we call her real quick? Get her on the line.
Say, I think there's something to be said for going out and doing something, whether it's going out to a dance place or something, or taking a course in cooking or taking ballroom dancing or whatever it is that people do now. Marianne and I met professionally at a conference. It happened to be a sex therapy conference for a group that she belonged to, and I was lecturing. And what it meant for us was that, and this is true for people going out and trying things, whether it's chess club or some activity, running club, is that there was something that we already had in common.
Yeah, it's true.
And it also selected for certain things, like there was a certain level for us of similar education and background. So there were some things that we didn't have to discover off out of the blue,
Mhm.
where there was a good chance that things wouldn't match so well. My mother would be very proud that I'm sharing that information right now as an idea. But I think that there's something to it, and that's human. And the app thing is unhuman.
Mm.
I'm not going to say it's inhumane, but it's something about it that we're not digital.
Mhm.
We're not digital. There's a digital world out there, but we're human beings. And there's a code that happens for people who have similar backgrounds, interests, values that you can pick up on very quickly.
That's really brilliant, Abe, because that not only speaks to your mother, it also speaks to to the whole like what swimming hole are you going to or what watering
No,
hole, not swimming hole, watering
right,
hole are
right.
you going to? Because
Yeah.
if you are
Well, you
someone,
could meet somebody at a swimming hole. That
I
might be
mean,
good.
you could. That is true. Your local YMCA. If you're someone who really values nature and being outside and, exploring your town and hiking or something, then if you went on an app, okay, so you're like a dual citizen, like you have an identity in, this country and that country. You have an analog identity and a digital identity. So then you're
Yeah.
meeting someone who is online that may reflect their citizenship. Then you get together and then you're
Mhm.
mad that they play video games all the time. Well, maybe
Right.
you'd be better off
Yeah.
going to a hiking meetup and hiking
Mhm.
with strangers than trying to meet strangers on an app. So that's
Yeah.
an interesting like priority list. Like when I talk to people who are especially single in midlife, they're like, what do I do? What do I do? Maybe start
Yeah.
with like, what do you love to spend your time with most, would you say? And then
Yeah.
yeah, go that
Yes.
direction.
I absolutely would, unless what you like to spend your time with most tends not to involve the gender that you're looking to date.
Okay, good point. This is why the two of you are such a good duo right here. Okay, so let's go back to the has the standard for good men changed? We heard from you, Marianne. Abe, do you feel like the definition of what makes a good man has changed in the past 20, 30 years?
I know I think it's okay, but I think that the standard may be the same. But listen, life has changed a lot over the last
Mhm.
20 years. I have tremendous compassion for men. I'm on that team. But there have been so many mixed signals that have happened for men over the last 20 plus years.
Mhm.
This idea that men have lower EQ, emotional IQ, if you will, than women, as if this is a failing of men,
Mm.
is really problematic. So men have strengths, and those strengths are different than those of women. Men and women clearly have equal value. They should have equal rights, equal protections under the law. But the idea that men and women are identical is BS. It's not biologically true. It's not socially true. And so women are clearly, more verbal at younger ages. They think through things much better than men. Marianne and I talk, and Marianne has her theory that has worked for us, where the guy needs to be about 10 years older than the woman, that there's some perfect thing. We're about 9.5 years different. It's working out great. Now that difference may be, the number of years may be different at different ages. But listen, there are differences. I have two children from my first marriage. And when one of them was in preschool, we're waiting for pickup. The parents are lined up, and you just watch the little boys and the little girls, and the girls are having tea parties, and they're chit chatting, and the boys are running around and literally bouncing into walls and bouncing off. Right, and there was a mother next to me waiting to pick up her son. And we're talking about these very obvious differences. And she says, I guess it's the testosterone. And now what's funny about that is testosterone is like mother's milk to me. That's what I've been researching for whatever. At age 5 or whatever those kids are, there's actually no difference in testosterone between boys and girls. They both have almost none. The testosterone kicks in at puberty for the guys, but they're different, and testosterone plays a role early in fetal life. There's a surge of testosterone that masculinizes some of the genitalia, but also the brain. And so there's something about that, but that you watch them play, and it's obvious. And what this mother said, it's so obvious to me that there's differences. She says, we decided when our child was born, our son was born, that we were not going to let him be exposed to any violence. He was never going to get a water pistol, no guns. And then one day I made him French toast for breakfast, and he took it and he made it into a gun. And with the French toast, he's going pow, pow, pow. She said, I don't know where he got it, but this is a guy thing. Anyway, the point is that the guys and the women are different. And going back to your question about what's a good man, and the reason I have sympathy for men is that guys feel like they've been beaten down. They don't know what it's like, what they're supposed to be doing. The things that they're told they're inferior about are things that don't necessarily come easily for them. And they often feel like they are, with the rise of feminism, and I'm all for it in its most important aspects, but they feel like there are a lot of women who are competing with them on a male level, and they don't want that in a partner.
That's
Hmm,
good.
that is
What I
good.
think
Yeah.
women don't appreciate about men, especially good men who are usually in jobs trying to do whatever they do,
Not
is
sending dick pics.
is that not the dick pic group. That's it. We're talking about a different group here. Is that they feel like they are warriors all day long, and although they may even want to be a warrior, They may thrive on being a warrior if they're successful. When they come home and be with their partner, they want to stop being a warrior. And if their partner is competing with them in everything, then they have no home. They have no place to just let it all down.
That's good. I wonder if there is an impossible double standard here for both men and women because, as you were describing the little kids, I remember being a little kid and not really fitting into that female group, not really wanting the tea parties and the chit chat and really kicking some serious ass at kickball. Like the boys wanted me on their team. I lived in a
Yeah.
neighborhood of all boys, but it wasn't just environmental. Like I just didn't quite have the enthusiasm for all the things that my girlfriends had. And on the flip side, I'm wondering how many men maybe also experience,
Mhm.
a different internal reality on that spectrum, and who
Mhm.
maybe they are more in touch with their feelings and they want to do the tea party,
Right.
like, although as a woman I can win either way now, in
Mhm.
80s it was a little harder, but like now they're like, oh, she can throw a baseball and she can, I don't know,
Mhm.
fill in the blank with something typical like wear high heels. That's hot. But
Mhm.
guys, it's like we want them to be able to express their feelings, but still be able to change the oil. And it's like if the guy is too one way or to the other, then, they're a little disenfranchised.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And we as women will say we want that sensitivity in a guy, right? But something Abe said really struck me, which is he doesn't want to come home and have to compete for, his masculine role. Well, I sure don't want to be competing for his emotionality. Like, I'm the emotional one here. Like, I don't want him coming home being emotional. So it kind of goes, at least for our relationship, both ways. Like, I hold that place and he holds his place. And it's very complimentary for us.
So is the key for people dating in midlife to really just be truthful about where they're at, like the geography of their temperament, in order to find that compatibility? Because I'm wondering if that's part of the challenge is people aren't honest about like let's use a man as an example. If he is like, I really love design and I love, home interiors and I love women, I'm straight,
Mhm.
but I'm not into football. Sorry. Do you want to talk about Shakespeare? We can do that. Is it about that honesty and compatibility? Because I'm wondering if that's where the rub is.
So that's a really good question. And I would say that would work as long as whoever that guy is imagining as his partner that he's going for, is that going to be compatible? If we're talking heterosexual, is
Yeah.
that going to be compatible for her? So is that also what she's going to want? Because sometimes what people want and who they want to be, they don't work.
Yeah. I don't mean to sound like I'm promoting guys being like Cro-Magnon men and and dragging their knuckles on the ground and that's the epitome of maleness. Not at all. And there's a lot of men and many of my friends who aren't necessarily that much into sports or football. And you bring up like plays or theater or literature and they like that. I mean, and they can have conversations about that. And I would think that that would be something that a lot of women would be interested in too. So there's a range of all of this. But my point was really more about how the guys feel put upon and it's hard for them to know how they're now supposed to be when they're with a woman.
Mm.
Like, what are they supposed to be doing? Are they supposed to be expressing all their emotions? And of course, there's got to be room in a relationship for some of that, right?
Hmm.
But, the traditional, I think, idea of men having a certain amount of strength that they can bring and a woman bringing a certain amount of softness, it doesn't mean that you can't throw a mean fastball.
We were talking about, the EQ, so the emotional intelligence. And I remember in our pre chat, you told me that, the kind of landscape of our world expects men to kind of have that same emotional intelligence as a woman, which is the heart of what you're getting at now. but I have to ask, like, is that all bad? Because I respect what you're saying about a man doesn't know how to act. Should he be like a tough guy or should he share his feelings? And I wonder if the dividing line is distress. Like if his emotional unintelligence is
Mm.
causing distress in himself or his partner, is that therefore the line? But also again not fair. If he doesn't get to practice it, then how would he know? Because how would he
Mhm.
know? It's not like he just pushes a button and bloop, now I have higher EQ and can express all the things.
Dr. Brandon?
So, well, honestly, what I would say to this is rather I would go back to what it feels like for this couple together, this hypothetical couple. Whatever his characteristics are, whatever his traits are, whatever his personality is, she needs to feel like she can relax into him. He could be totally, very emotional and be the caretaker of the kids and all this. But if she doesn't feel like she can relax into him, there's something that's going to go wrong for them sexually that is just going to be very difficult for them to change over time. So I sort of don't care what his characteristics are as long as she has that feeling. And if the feeling is he relaxes into her, unless they really like being in different, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like she likes the masculine role, he likes the feminine, whatever. If he's relaxing into her in any significant amount of time, she's going to feel like his parent. She's not going to like that. So I sort of go back to the feeling of the dynamic rather than getting too caught up. Now, I participate in this conversation. I mean, I use these same terms, but I think we have to keep in sort of perspective that these are just characteristics of a human being, and the bottom line is the vibe
The
together.
vibe. Yeah. Yeah. I think I understand what you're saying. That, especially as a woman, we love to
Mhm.
get granular. Like, oh, yeah, let's do all the details and let's use therapy talk and let's talk about all the things. And it is entertainment. It's about as bad as using the apps, right? Because I think that's why we like true crime. I mean, it is helpful to know to where
Oh.
bury the body, but I think we like psychoanalyze the killer together. You know what I mean? And
I
so,
do.
yeah, I totally lost my train of thought as soon as I went into true
You know,
crime.
it's more typical of women than men to do that kind of
Mhm.
analysis.
Yeah, it is pretty satisfying. I'm not even gonna lie. Like we just like it. But I do wonder, especially when you weave in the therapy talk for those of us without PhDs, Marianne, and then everyone's ex is a narcissist. It
Yes.
becomes
Yes.
like we become victims of one another. And
Yes.
and actually I had a listener write in, she says, there seems to be a huge divide right now between men and women in the dating world. We're all afraid of each other, afraid of getting hurt. When did getting hurt
Yeah.
become such a devastating thing? Men and women don't seem as resilient as they used to be. And I wonder if part of this, like over analyzing, is reflective of our enjoyment of going inward just as we go on
Mhm.
the apps instead of going
Mhm.
outward just as we would go out on a Friday night. And it creates like a heightened state of anxiety and fear where we just can't win.
Mhm. So I think there's the real truth to that. That makes a lot of sense to me. I also think the world has gotten much scarier. So, when I was in, junior high, nobody was taking a video of me and
Oh,
posting it
yeah.
when I did something stupid, which I did. So we're sort of aware that they have more power to hurt us than they used to. And now I'm really kind of worried about these smart glasses
Mm.
because now people are going to go on dates and they can get filmed. And I see AI is gathering so much power that pretty soon, and we're so easy to manipulate. Human beings are so easy to manipulate.
If you had told me, like, asked me 10 years ago, like the Apple phone is here, like there are going to be all these apps, you're going to spend all your time on this thing, I would have said, no way. I'm completely impervious to all that stuff. Me? Are you kidding me? And it's amazing how much time I spend looking at my phone. But it's not that I'm a weak human being, it's that the technology to engage is so powerful. The question is how it affects relationships, how it affects sex and sexuality and intimacy. And it's a whole new world out there now.
In fact, that reminds me of something that you said, Abe, in our pre-chat. You said men have many options and they're not all human.
Right.
Referring,
Oh
of
my,
course, to porn and AI, and now we have romantic chatbots. The movie Her is real life. Would you
yeah.
recommend that men not engage in those sort of digital outlets if they are trying to actually find human companionship?
Listen, this stuff with the AI chatbots, the romantic ones, this is I would say in its infancy now. And whatever it is going to be so much more potent before long. Much of what I know, I learned from Marianne, who's at the forefront of this. She brings me along to these unbelievable events. Marianne took me some years ago, 5, 6 years ago, to a conference that blew my mind. She says, I'm going to this thing in Belgium. You need to come accompany me. I can't go alone. It was called
The Sex and Love with Robots conference. Did we talk about?
Sex,
I am
Sex
familiar
and
with
Love
that, but
with
I think it's because I was
Robots.
listening to your podcast.
And the people who attended that were dead serious. Now, robots, I think the bloom has come off of the robots because the AI, the visual stuff is actually in many ways more potent, and you don't need this bulky thing that really I don't think has evolved that much. But listen. But the other way that I'm exposed is you just scroll on anything on Instagram, and you get ads for these different companies where there are these beautiful looking AI imaged females who say, you look lonely. I can fix that. Sign up. I can be whatever you want. Tell me what you want me to do in these soft,
They
seductive
look like you,
voices.
Meredith. They're gorgeous. That's a compliment.
Thank
That's
you. I think I feel uncomfortable.
Isn't it?
Oh.
So, but listen, I think that to deal with a flawless appearance in, let's call it an entity, it's an algorithm that has no needs of its own and is there to satisfy you and just be there for you. Boy, that's enticing, right? But that sure isn't human.
Yeah.
And people, I mean, I don't know how much time you want to devote to this topic, but people are having less sex and they're reporting more stress, more depression. When people are depressed, when they're stressed, they don't have the energy to go out and meet people. They don't have the energy to take care of a partner's needs. They're sort of just barely keeping their head above water. Like a third of adults will say, on most days, I'm so stressed, I can't function. That was out of a 2022 Stress in America survey by the American Psychological Association. 46% of people age 35 and younger said that on most days, I'm so stressed, I can't function. If they are so stressed they can't function, they actually just don't have the energy for a human. And if this gives them some comfort, that's what they're going to do. So, and we also see with some of this tech, like the physiological proof that they're feeling connected, like oxytocin release when watching virtual reality porn, which we never saw when people were watching 2D porn on their phone. There wasn't a release of a cuddle hormone, a love hormone at that time, right? There's a study of a sperm bank, and I think it's in Amsterdam, a sperm bank. So they have sperm donors. And what they found, and published this in academic journal, is when their guys masturbated and gave a sample using VR porn, it was a better sample. It was more concentrated sperm than 2D porn. So see, we've got physiological, right? Isn't that right? That's right. And so here's where I am particularly worried, just to kind of sum it up, is we are adults, we have choices in what we're going to participate, and we can find people that want to participate at the level we do. But we're also training adolescents on this stuff. So adolescents have neuroplastic brains. That means their brains are forming based on their experience. Adolescents watch cartoon porn. They don't watch human porn. They read cartoon romance novels, not humans anymore. So their brains are forming on this stuff. So even if we can maintain appropriate boundaries with tech for the rest of our lives, I actually don't feel as confident for kids
Yeah.
because they're having experience with tech before they have any kiss with a human, or like they're not even dating.
Yeah, I wonder if it was the same study. It was a 2022 study done in part with the Kinsey Institute saying 1 in 4 Gen Z adults have never had partnered sex.
Right.
1 in 4. And I know we're
Isn't that?
talking about dating in midlife, but
Mhm.
we're all connected. So it's kind of hard to escape that. When we talk about, okay, the what now, because all of this information is true and we live in a yes and society,
Yeah.
right? And so the yes and of this much of our conversation thus far is yes, porn, yes, stress, yes, gender expectations, and what do we do? And so I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you how you suggest people in their day to day, what do you think that they can do to keep, for one, their conversation skills sharp, their emotional intelligence authentic to them, right? Not fake therapy
Mhm.
speak, not mimetics. But how do you do that in a world where everyone's looking down at their phone?
Yeah.
Any suggestions?
I think it's very simple and very unsatisfying at the same time, which is everybody knows they got to get out. They got to chat, chat up someone at the grocery store, chat up someone at the coffee shop. That's what you got to do to achieve what you're suggesting. That's what I think. What do you think?
So, the easiest thing is to be home and put on TV or look at your device and doom scroll or whatever it is you're doing. But I think most people who do it after a while have a certain disgust level with themselves. Like they just know, like, this is the most depressing thing ever if that's what you're doing. And so you have to get out. And then the challenge is that people, our lives are so fragmented. There's so many people who are alone and feel alone that they don't have an automatic friend to go out with and to hang out. And so what do? It's almost the same advice I gave about my mother. It's not only about romance, it's about finding meaning in your own life
Mm.
and trying
That's
to
good.
have some of that meaning be with other human beings. As flawed as
Mhm.
humans are, we are social beings. One of the worst, it's considered a form of torture, really, is people in the prison system get put into isolation.
Mhm.
They can go psychotic. It's not the milk of human kindness because it's not always kind, but we need the give and take of human interaction, of conversation, of being in the same place with people. And so, like, get involved in the world, get
Mm.
involved and get out of your own head and out of your own world.
I want to shift now to mental health because that's certainly a thread along everything that we're talking about. And Abe,
Yeah.
some women are complaining that in place of the good men, the selection is a group of men that are a little bit resigned from life. They're a little bit moody. They don't appear to take care of themselves. Since you're the testosterone guy, as Marianne likes to point out, I love that. I love how proud you are of each other. But to what degree is low testosterone to blame for these symptoms?
Well, what a wonderful
Yeah.
question. So, listen, I've been studying testosterone for about 40 years. So, I've been at this a long time, and then I became a urologist, and I've been specializing in sexual medicine, and I've been doing research and treating men around testosterone ever since. So, I didn't know that's where you're going to end up with your question. But here's the fact is that the prevalence of low levels of testosterone is extremely high. So if you look at men over 45 and above, it's about one third of men that have low levels just on a biochemical, on a blood test. So there's a lot of that. And testosterone is, it's key for so many parts of who we are and what we do. Men and women, by the way. So everybody thinks about it around sex and muscle, and that's true. So you need testosterone to feel turned on, to be hungry for sex, to perform sexually. Testosterone has tremendous effects on muscle. That's why the bodybuilders and the athletes take excessive amounts. I mean, they're taking levels that can be as many as 20 to 50 times the upper limit in normal. But most of the guys who are low, if they take testosterone, they're never going to look bulked up. They just look normal. But where it can really play a role, and this is what you were getting at, is that, well, let me tell you by analogy or example. There's sort of this midlife blah that a lot of the guys where they've lost their mojo. Now that can just be life, right? But in some cases it can be hormonal. So I had a patient who is probably about 60. He was a psychiatrist. And he came to see me, had a variety of issues. I measured testosterone levels on almost every man that would come in. His levels were low, and we ended up treating him, and he did well. Now, when I say he did well, he had been treating himself with 3 different antidepressants, which he could prescribe for himself, and he came off all of them.
Wow.
And what he said is, I used to be an expert in men of middle years. I had my own term for it. He said, I would call this middle-aged male malaise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking now, based on my own experience, that at least some of these men, the cause is low testosterone. So, as men get older, testosterone levels decline. And once they get below a certain threshold, guys have symptoms, but it happens slowly. And so you may not notice it. It's not like all of a sudden something happened, but guys may notice, or the people around them may notice, you're not as much fun to be around. Where's your sense of humor? You used to think this movie we're watching, you used to love whatever it is, these kinds of movies. And where is that now? And I would have guys who would come into the office, and they say, one guy came in, and, before you go in the room, they have a questionnaire. It says, what are you here to see the doctor for today? And he said, and it's written there, the sofa speaks to me.
Oh my goodness.
And I didn't know if he's like psychotic or something, right? So I go in, he's this very funny guy. I say, so tell me about this sofa thing. And he says, doctor, I've always been this busy guy. I have 2 jobs, not because I need the money, but because I like to be busy. I've got a workshop. That's where I am at night and weekends. And the last couple of years, every time I cross the living room floor, I hear my sofa yell out to me, come, lie down, take a nap. He says, it's not me. It's not me. He had low levels of testosterone. We treated him, and he got himself back to where he was. So I don't want to, I sometimes get criticized because, when they say, like, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Not everything is testosterone related, but there's much more of it out there than people understand.
Yeah. Marianne, on the female side, I remember you saying that if women want to enjoy their sex life, that she has to, quote, let go in bed. Is there anything about that struggle that's related to mental health, or is it related to other
Wow,
areas?
that's a powerful question, and we could talk about it for hours. I think yes to all of that. You know, so many pieces to this, but maybe if I could sum it up, we have to be able to let go of control to enjoy sex. Now, for most women, it's easier to enjoy, for most people, it's easier to enjoy sex with a newer relationship than a longer term relationship. So, for many of the people listening, they're going to feel like this isn't as much of a struggle if they're in a newer relationship and they're dating. Okay. But to really enjoy sex, we got to let go. That feels vulnerable. And it's something that I think in many ways we strive not to do. We strive to maintain control in our lives, and it helps us be so functional and accomplish what we accomplish. And so control has a lot of benefit. But if we don't practice or become comfortable with the other side of letting go, then sex is really not going to be anything close to what it could be for us. And so, those of us who strive to maintain that are probably going to find themselves having more struggle in the bedroom. And that feeling of being okay, being vulnerable, and even finding the pleasure in it can be really hard. What I will have my female clients do is sort of like, if they relate to that statement, it's hard to find pleasure and vulnerability. I'll have them lock themselves like in their bedroom and practice like a yoga hip opener, which is a very exposing yoga posture, and put on some nice music and be alone and see if she can find the pleasure just for herself and that level of letting go and opening. Because if she's not there with herself, it's going to be next to impossible to her for her to find that with a partner. So, like, I encourage them to give themselves some space and time to cultivate this part of themselves, because we've really pushed that away from women. We've discouraged women from enjoying that vulnerability. We've scared women with it. And there's very good reason. Vulnerable sexually means you're potentially more likely to get raped or harassed and all of that. So it's not like we were coming at this from a wrong place as a society, but we can't forget that if she really wants to enjoy sex over the course of her life, she needs this other skill too. And that's what worries me, like in the ways that we parent little girls, like we're saying, be fierce, be fierce. Well, that's great. But that doesn't mean forget vulnerability, because if that's the case, she's not learning any life skills to be in a relationship.
I love that you said vulnerability is a skill because, oh, why have I
Mhm.
never thought of that before? Like, like, oh yeah, vulnerability is a skill. We think of vulnerability as a default because when we're born, we're like naked and squishy, and that's
Yeah.
vulnerable. It's like some sort of, oh, but don't worry, you'll grow out of it. But we never look at vulnerability as an opportunity. I love that.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
On that same topic, I want to ask you about what Emily Nagoski, the author, describes as brakes and accelerators, kind of using like a
Mhm.
car analogy. Is it true that women just have more triggers for their brakes to get pushed than men, and that becomes like a dating problem because all of a sudden women can get what they call the ick because he's
Yeah.
breathing loud or something?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So yes, all that is true. There are little different topics that you're kind of merging into one, but
Yeah.
both are true. Like, for example, women will say, I can't have sex if the kids are in the house. Okay, that
Mhm.
makes sense. But I've never heard a guy say that. I've never once heard a man say, I can't have sex when the kids are in the house. So there's so many of those. I could list 20 of those like this that women have that men don't have. So jumping then to your other, so that's the breaks that you were referring to the other point of women getting triggered, like the ick factor. Absolutely, women have, men have it too, no question, but women have a stronger ick factor. It's actually, we could also call it sexual disgust. We have a stronger disgust response in general in the world, which makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. Is, we're breastfeeding, we're gestating an infant. Like, if we're ingesting, rotten food, we're not going to be very successful at that endeavor. So we have a stronger disgust response to protect, babies, whatever. But that plays out in the bedroom too. So she's going to be more likely to say to anal sex, whereas a guy may not. But, that's a generalization, of course. But yeah, so anything that triggers that ick can really be so profound for her that it like turns the whole experience off. It's hard to come back from ick.
I feel bad for guys when I hear this conversation. I want to say, what's I love the
Nothing. You're
way
perfect. You're perfect. Everything's perfect. I mean, this is a lot to navigate. I can really
Yeah,
see why, if people are experiencing higher levels of stress and anxiety, they're just like chucking it in the fuck it bucket because you know what? We can get some AI chatbot on Friday night and not have to deal
right,
with any of this. And
right.
so, people are really struggling. We have talked a lot about heterosexual men and women today. Are the gays faring any better? How are they doing?
within every group, there's some people who are doing just fine and some people who are struggling. And who we hear about a lot are the people who are struggling,
Oh, okay.
right? Right? So people are always willing to tell you about their problems, but share less when everything is going just fine. But listen, I think it's hard for everybody. There's a lot that's going on in this world. I would say to you that the hardest things that human beings do is actually relationships. It's just hard. It's so easy to make a misstep, and somebody might chew it the wrong way, and the woman says, I can't stand the way you chew. I mean, I'm using that as a funny example, right? But that happens, right? You hear women who say, I can't stand the way he chews.
Yeah.
Well, what's the guy going to do?
Yeah.
What's he going to do, doctor?
If she can't stand, well, usually when I hear that in a therapy room, which I hear frequently, that kind of comment, I mean, usually it means there's something deeper going on that's getting expressed that way. And
Right.
it doesn't, so I try to unpack that to the degree that I can. And so whatever disgust is happening or lack of respect, it's getting
Yeah.
like articulated in that way. But when there's a respect problem between a woman and her partner, it doesn't matter how much she loves them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that just kills it.
I
And
have
so
told
that's
people that over and over again. I'm like, y'all do not hold grudges. Get your shit figured out, because once you lose respect for your partner and resentment takes its place, you're
oh,
donezo.
you're donezo.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So, in your therapy room, how much does the 50-50 concept come into play when you're talking about respect? Because I wonder what this looks like for the world, for other people who aren't me. Like I remember one time this older woman said, "Listen, marriage isn't 50-50, it just needs to equal 100." And
Well,
you figure out the
it
details. And I was
is.
like, oh, I
Mm,
really appreciated that, because I was hearing like 50-50, kind of this transactional thing, and it really made me feel like, okay, when I go out to get a partner, I better Venmo him for my portion of the dinner. And it's like,
mm,
okay, I wonder if that paradigm is incorrect. But more importantly, like from your perspective, because you have a broader
mhm.
uh, pool to sample from, how
Yeah.
often is that concept an issue?
We've taught people they have to have this like completely equal kind of relationship. And I think relationships function better in a much more nuanced way, which is what I think you were saying.
Yeah.
So I talk to people about having equal respect. That's essential.
Mm.
I mean, equal respect in a relationship is foundational. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't have that. But that doesn't mean we're equivalent or we should be doing the same amount of every activity. I encourage my couples, like, what are you best at? What do you like amongst the chores and the household thing? And figure it out that way. So everybody sort of has their own expectation. So to me, I think that addresses what you're saying. Are we talking equivalent? Does everybody do the dishes? Not necessarily everybody does the dishes, but you have to be in agreement and feel that equal respect. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, but I didn't expect you to answer in that way, and I kind of love that more, because because like what you're saying is, if there's mutual respect, then we go into the relationship to give. And if we're not mutually respecting the other, we go in to get our 50%, you know?
I think that's so true and so important. Like that was wonderful. I think that's, when one of the things about Abe that was so powerful to me is he kind of like, without even asking me, he might, but he sort of assesses what I need and he tries to gratify me. And it's really wild to just have this show up. So I try to reciprocate that. Like, what does he need and how can I gratify that? Not are his needs appropriate or do I like his needs? How can I gratify that? And I think that's similar to what you're saying. Like, how can I give? Because you get back in spades when you have that attitude.
Yeah. This next listener question is from someone who is a giver like that, and she says she was married for 40 years and now she's single. So all
Mhm.
she knows is how to give like that. She says, "I only know how to wife. How do I learn to pace myself and not jump right into wife behavior when I meet
Right.
someone new?"
So that's a good point because she doesn't want to be the only one giving. That's then
Right.
totally going to be a lopsided and unsatisfying relationship. Personally, I would have her journal. If she was in my office, I would have her journal. Start asking her what she brings to a relationship that empowers her and empowers the relationship, not just, her, and what takes away from it. It wasn't good for her, but it also wasn't good for the relationship. And then that reflected back to her. I feel like I'm being really wordy here. Do you
No,
know what I'm saying?
yeah, no, I think you got it. I would just add from the men's point of view is that men love to have a job and or responsibility and to have it to be clear. So men often are looking for direction from the women about what will please the woman.
Mm.
right? So I have a line in one of my books. I hope I can remember it right, which is, that a man's definition of great sex, if he's straight, is when the woman says that was great sex.
Hmm, that's sweet.
But what's implied in there is that the guy's monitoring what's going on, and if he's not, then he's kind of in his own head. That's a whole different thing. It's not that much different than masturbation in a way. And the guys get their purpose often in relationships from knowing they're doing a good job. A good job. And so, when you were asking before about 50-50 and things, I would say stop that bullshit right now. It's one of the worst things that has ever happened to relationships. It's relatively new. Since time immemorial, in all cultures, there were different rules for men and for women, right? And it's really an experiment of the last 40 years, maybe a little bit more, that we have this idea that's not based on anything except some theoretical principle that everything needs to be 50-50. It doesn't work that way. It's not good for anybody, my opinion. And what guys, they don't want to be competing with the woman about who's taking out the garbage the fastest, right? Like when the bag is full. The guy wants a job. Let him do whatever that is so he can take pride in that chore within that relationship. And that's great. He wants to know, what is she like? He wants to actually be able to do something kind for her. Yes, he wants his own needs met. I mean, let's not be, you know, guys are guys and guys have needs too, right? But part of the story is he wants to know he's doing a good job by her if he likes her. If he likes her. And if she can't communicate anything about what actually she likes for herself, he has no way to really excel for her. Guys want to excel.
Unless she's choosing partners that tend towards selfishness, which is possible, that, we often look for partners that
Those are the
replicate.
dick pic guys.
Yeah, maybe they are.
I'm
Wow, we've
sorry.
come full circle, everyone.
Right.
No, I didn't mean to cut
I
you off
guess
there.
no, if I had her, so I would ask her to take a deeper look at who she's choosing as a partner. We do something called repetition compulsion. So something from our past that didn't go well in a relationship, we keep repeating it in modern day, trying to fix it this time. So we feel compelled to keep doing it till we got it right. And is she stuck in a cycle like that? So I'd ask her to look at the partner choice, but I would also ask her to do a deep dive in her journaling about what she feels like has gone wrong for her in past relationships and why. Try to get as much insight on that as she possibly can. Journaling is the time to put the things on paper that you really don't want to think. It's the time to face the truth. Don't just write what's nice. So hold herself accountable to doing that. And then can she have honest conversations when she's in a relationship where she really feels like the guy is worth fighting for? Can she have honest conversations? This is what I used to do, and I didn't speak up for these needs. I think I was afraid of losing my partner. I think whatever she says. And just start to have a dialogue with him and see if he can be helpful to her, become like her partner in helping break this cycle as opposed to she's trying to do it on her own. That's what I would say.
Man, this is such good stuff, you guys. Between Abe, what you said just now, and Marianne, what you said just now, I feel like we just answered the question, where have all the good men and women gone? Because you were just saying we repeat our own bad habits and
Yeah.
attract duplicates of the bad stuff that we've had. And so it may create a perception that all of the good partners, like, God ain't making them anymore. you know, like, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for this discussion. Please, each of you, shout out the amazing stuff that you have going on, your books, your podcast, all of the things, because when dear listener, when you go to each of their respective websites, you're like, holy cow, there's so much that y'all are doing to share your insights and to continue your own education, and it's so impressive. So
Mm.
yeah, shout out your things, please.
Oh, thank you. So, what's very close to my heart these days is my Psychology Today blog. It's called The Future of Intimacy because I am very concerned how AI is impacting humanity. If you're a parent of a child or adolescent, I really hope you stay on top of my blog, even though it's not always going to feel relevant, because that's the subset of our population that's going to be most impacted. And parenting around that is critical right now. So that's not the focus of my blog, but I certainly bring that up. So that and our podcast, which is an absolute blast for me.
Me too.
Get him stuck in a room where I can ask him questions about research is like a blast. But anyway, yeah. So the Sex Doctors podcast is really fun.
Yeah. So the website is thesexdoctorspodcast.com. And on my end, I would have people take a look at my last book, which is called The Truth About Men and Sex. It's a different idea about who men really are, basically things that they've shared behind the closed door of the doctor's office. Men are very different than our stereotype of them. And they're often trying to do a great job for their partners, even though it may not always come out the right way, that it may not be received that way. My current work around testosterone, you can find out on my website, which is T4L. It stands for Testosterone for Life. So T, the number 4, the letter L, education.com, T4L education.com.
Thank you all so much. This has been such a blast, and I
Oh,
have a feeling that we will be talking again very soon.
I hope so. It was really my pleasure.
It was great,
Yeah.
Meredith. Thanks so much for having us.